Okay, folks, I'm going to try and make this pretty quick, okay? I want to, and now people who've been on this channel a long time, they know this. Some people, though, pop in and spread their form of wisdom and leave, and they've never been there before. They don't know me. They don't know where I'm coming from. They don't know any of that. But, you know, and then want to impart their special wisdom to me about something I know a lot about. I may not have been raising chickens as long as somebody else because I was military. You can't drag chickens around from during your permanent change of station. You can't do that, okay? If you think you can, you don't know what the military's like. So just because someone has a lot of experience, a lot of experience, I've got over 19 years worth, but you know, some people may have had chickens longer than me. They may be older than me. I don't know. Now that's not my only experience. My experience also has to do with being raised with my grandfather on my grandfather's farm. He was a commercial grower as well as had his own chickens, his own cows, Angus cattle, hogs, the whole shebang. So I was around chickens a lot when I was a kid. I don't know nothing. I just couldn't have them until I got out of the suburbs. I got out of the military, and then we got out of the suburbs and all that. When I say, it's like the thing, I re-released the roost video. That was a video from 4 years ago. I re-released it because I redid the lighting. The lighting was terrible. Still not the best quality because it wasn't done in a high quality format. Different camera equipment and all that then. But I got a comment about that. You know, it's like, oh, well, I have been raising chickens for 40 years, and I have found that, and I'm thinking, okay, well, he doesn't know where I'm coming from with the flat roost. One reason probably is he probably doesn't have these giant chickens that I have. Bash's feet are almost as big as my hand, okay? As well as he probably hasn't had chickens live long enough to become arthritic. Most of mine lived to over 10 years old. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and almost 15. My Easter egger June lived at she was over 14 and a half when she died. But when you have some birds live that old, they end up with old people problems, old, you know, feathered people problems. And some get arthritis, some worse than others. Atlas had terrible arthritis. You watched him flex his feet every time he walked. I call him Old Flexing Step. And he got that through genetics. He was also old. He was 9 years old when he died, but he has a genetic predisposition to having arthritic joints that came down through his grandfather. Anyway, that's one reason that flat roosts are superior to round roosts. Because of the size chickens that I have, the size birds that I have. I've got the Bantams now. They can get on a 2-inch piece of whatever, but sure. But I've got chickens with very large feet. I mean, Godzilla feet. The Delawares, Heritage Delawares. The Barred Plymouth Rocks from 2 different lines, which were not hatchery stock descended. These have been bred for years and years and years. They're larger than their hatchery counterparts by a good shot. Rhode Island Reds, hatchery. Rhode Island Reds from the Mohawk line, the dark red, almost black ones. They're like, this is the way they stood. They're huge. The Rhode Island Reds from those old lines are humongous. They're not like my little production Reds from Ideal Hatchery were. So that's one reason is I have large birds. Second, I have arthritic birds. My birds live to be most of them live to pretty ripe old age. And not all of them develop arthritis. June was just starting to get stiff leg at 14 and a half years old. So she didn't have to suffer like Atlas did, and Zara and Athena are suffering now because they're his daughters. They have it. They flex and step too. So there's several reasons that flat roosts are superior when chickens do not grip like wild birds. They don't grip like this around a round pole. They grip like they stand on it. They don't grip very much. So round roosts are not optimal for them. There's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. I hate that term, but there's more than one way to do things, yes. There are the optimal ways to do things, and there are the ways to do things for the particular flock that you have. If this guy's got a bunch of little hatchery birds and he don't have any with humongous feet and he don't have any that live long enough to get arthritis, then, his round roost may be fine. But to some, I have found that these are better. Well, not necessarily. But when I tell you this is the way I think this should be done and that this has worked for us, I'm not saying you have to do it this way. You have to. I'm giving you an alternative. My motto for the channel is take what you need and leave what you don't. If you don't want to have flat roosts for your birds, don't. Watch for bumblefoot. Watch for birds that are having a hard time balancing, like the ones with my arthritic joints. Isaac fell off the roost. That's how he got frostbite. In the old coop, there was water, there was air running under it. Even though he had good bedding, he fell off. He couldn't get back up. His toes, because he had very stiff legs. He had arthritic legs. And he very poor circulation, and he got frostbite in his toes, not his comb, but his toes, from sleeping on the floor in 2-degree weather. Fan, stop it. I'm not going to let you in yet. My cat wants to go in. Just wait a minute, kid. So there are reasons to do things the way I do them. Now, this person said, well, I found that young chickens, developing chickens, end up with crooked keel bones if they don't, or crooked breast bones, I forget what word he used, if they're on flat surfaces. I'm like, I've never seen that one time. Not once. Well, my experience over 19 years is that flat roosts are superior for several reasons. They don't have to balance. If a chicken falls off, if he hits his neck a certain way, he can break his neck and die. You'll find him on the floor dead in the morning. So, this is not the way it has to be done, but this to me is the optimal way from my experience and my research. Both. I know a lot of people, well, my grandfather said so and so. My grandfather raised chickens too. He raised commercial flocks and he had his own chickens. My dad had his own chickens. He understood chickens. He handled chickens a lot. But they had their misconceptions about them. Like, hens are happier with a rooster. How do you figure that? How do you measure a hen's happiness? Sometimes they're happier without. Now, yes, they get attached to the ones they have and defer to them, but that doesn't mean they're happier with a rooster. Now, if I take the rooster away they're used to, they'll get upset. But if they've never had one, they don't miss a rooster. No pressure. No jumping your bones, y'all, every 5 seconds, that kind of thing. So, old farmers are full of old farmers' tales and old farmers' misinformation and erroneous ideas. So experience doesn't necessarily mean you know more. I have 19 years of having my own chickens. However, I was raised on that farm. I spent a lot of time on that farm as a child, around chickens, hogs, cattle, mules, horses. I spent a lot of time on that farm. I have a lot of experience with chickens. So I guess you could say I've got 67 years of experience with chickens. I just couldn't have my own till the 2000s because we were military, and then before this we lived in the suburbs and we could not have livestock in the suburbs in that particular subdivision. So I just want to make that clear. Okay. I have a thing called 10 Speckled Hen's 10 Commandments of Good Flock Management. Now that's just a catchy title. That doesn't mean I'm telling you what to do. If you don't want to do it, you do what you want to do. But there's optimal way and there's this other ways. There are optimal ways to do things with chickens. There are. I don't feed mine exactly like somebody else feeds theirs. I free feed. I keep their feeders full of feed all the time. Some people don't. They give them food once a day or twice a day or whatever. And a lot of times they throw it on the ground, which I think is not optimal because it draws rats. Now, I don't have rats because I got feed all over the place, but they got into my barn where the feeders are. And, grains hit the floor and whatnot. You can't keep it clean of food on the floor in a barn. You just can't. Get in your chair, Finn. So it doesn't mean that their way of rationing food is wrong. It's just not the way I do it. I'm always leaving it in their pens because I always think if I leave the property, I might get stuck out there somewhere. And if I'm stuck for a long time, I want to make sure everybody has a lot of food and water, especially water, to last a day or two, at least a couple days, if not more than that. So that's why I feed the way I do. Is it the only right way to feed? No, of course it isn't. I do think you need to feed them proper food. And corn alone is not proper food. But if somebody has chickens that they free range all the time and they're eating grains out of the poop of their cows or whatever, and they're eating bugs and they're out running around the farm, feeding them corn may just be a supplement for them. I think it's very low in protein. There's no calcium. There's 8% protein. My birds eat at least 16 to 22% protein depending on what feed they're getting. Even my so-called scratch is 13 or 14 grains, and it has 16% protein by itself because my roosters can eat just that. They don't need the calcium for egg laying. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say, but there are optimal ways. Chickens may survive in certain conditions, but they may not thrive in certain conditions. And this man, apparently, he was not I find when I get snarky comments that people want to impart their wisdom about certain subjects, a lot of times it has to do with they're not regular subs. They see a title, they jump on it, they go, I know better than she does, and they want to come and enlighten me. And sometimes it skirts on the lecturing part. And if you're lecture, you're going to be out of here. I don't allow you to come here to lecture, and I don't allow misinformation to stand on my channels, especially about chickens. I don't allow that. Now, I'm not saying if the round roost is this big, if you got a giant, it's not slippery, it's a big one, maybe they'll be okay. But see, my chickens, Bash's feet are humongous. You see Bash's feet. Atlas's feet were humongous. Isaac's feet, my Delaware rooster, were humongous. My Blue Orpington's feet were humongous. Round roost wouldn't have worked for them. So you have to actually tweak some of your management style based on the chickens that you have. They're not all the same. A little Belgian Danver can sit on a much smaller surface than a big, giant breeder quality Brahma. So I hope that makes sense. All right. Anyway, that's all I want to say. That's all I wanted to say. Just clarify that. Before I got chickens, I researched for a long time. I researched how to build a predator-proof coop, how to give them plenty of ventilation. I see people building coops all the time that don't have enough ventilation on them. And do I say that? Not usually. I don't. I usually don't say. If I was going to say something, I might say, you really probably should put a little teeny bit more ventilation up high for the birds in that particular coop because you live in a climate that's very hot and they will roast in there without the proper ventilation. But I don't usually do that. I just put out what I consider better information for people to glean from and take what you need, leave what you don't. It's very simple. You don't have to come and lecture me because if you do, you're going to find yourself outside the door. So, bye y'all. Have a good day.